November 16th, and the time is 6:35 p.m. And I'd like to call this meeting to order. Our first order of business is the consent agenda. First up is to vote on the minutes. Does anyone have, has everyone had a chance to read the minutes? And are there any adjustments or comments or anything?
I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Next up is warrants 29 and 30. I think they just went around and we signed them. Any questions, comments? Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve warrants number 29 and 30.
Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed unanimously. Next is to vote on the technology donation.
Speak to it.
Yes, please. I didn't see.
Yeah, there's nothing in the
There's
folder.
nothing in the folder that I see, so just need you to run it down for us.
So, we received a few more printers donated by Benefit Business Systems, our Xerox vendor, and they also provide our managed services for the school. They have, on several occasions, provided laser printers that are in very good condition that were retired from other clients, some of them in almost brand new condition. So this most recent donation was three printers, which have been deployed at the high school. So currently at the high school, with all the donations they made, if you walk around certain parts of the building, the offices, the computer labs, the library, you'll see the black Hewlett-Packard printers. They were all donated by them. So with almost all the printers in high school now, we receive for free, and they're in good operating condition. So this is a routine vote. I'm asking you to take to accept these, and there'll be more to follow.
Excellent. Can I have a motion to vote to accept the technology donation?
I'll make the motion to accept the technology donation.
Second?
I'll second.
Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Passed
Thank you.
unanimously, and thank you to Connecticut Business Systems. That's fantastic. Next is our visitors' comments. Any citizen wishing to speak before the committee must sign one with the administrative assistant prior to the opening of the regular session of the school committee. The visitor will identify themselves by name and address and shall speak for no longer than 3 minutes. Do we have any visitor comments tonight? Give it a minute. Looks like it's all, oh, there's a phone number.
There's a call in. Yeah.
All right, seeing none, we'll move along. Marcus is not here. Cheryl, is she online?
No.
No, okay, moving right along. Next up is continuing business, pool testing.
Yeah, so I can speak to pool testing. We are in, I think, week 3 now, where we've been testing on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays with our program coordinator. We also have the CNA that's working, and Nancy, I think I said last week, or 2 weeks ago, Nancy is like gradually releasing that to them, which is nice for her, freeing her up a little bit to get back to her typical day-to-day. Still working with them pretty closely, though. We've had, I think, 1 negative of the pools since we started.
One negative?
1 negative pool, which resulted in one positive pool, sorry.
Yeah.
That resulted
I was
in
like, wait,
one
I
student.
haven't seen that
and-
many cases.
Yeah, 1 student and some close contacts. The close contacts were able to stay in school through test and stay. And our plan right now is we're going to try to ramp up testing, scale it up to what we had hoped to be because of the support. And our goal is the week after Thanksgiving to test everybody who's consented. So after vacations and the extended weekends, to try to test everybody who's consented to the pool, because we know we saw some spikes at those times last year.
Okay, any questions or comments?
I guess one other detail. So we had gone, not to get into too much detail, but we had gone with the Veritas. Right now, it's like they're spitting into a tube. We have found that is a challenge for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, right? You probably teach them not to spit, so they don't know how to spit in some cases. So Veritas did just come out with the nasal swab option, so we're gonna be ordering that for our youngest students. So we should have that in the next couple of weeks. Our goal is to have it in for that week after Thanksgiving.
So about how many of the participants are we testing right now?
We've been doing this week, I want to say it's about 40 to 50 total. We had been doing only about 20 up
Okay.
until then. And when we scale up, we're in about the 120, 130 range
Okay.
when we test everybody.
So right now, are you doing like 1 week, one group, and then the next week, the next?
We're
or it's kind of
doing-
randomized?
Between 1 and 3 groups at each school right now. So the numbers are a little bit lower because this week we had planned for some of the pre-K and K, but because we didn't get as many samples as we had planned because of the spit samples. So we're learning as we go, and trying to adjust to that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? All right, if not, school capacity updates. We met last, as a virtual meeting, and we kind of came to a couple more conclusions. I think our next meeting, we're, canceling and turning it into like a walkthrough at the high school and kind of moving along and seeing kind of where the path leads us. We're at that point now where we feel like we need to start making plans, like, okay, if this is option A, what's gonna happen because of option A? If this is option B, what's gonna happen because of option B? And kind of just seeing, not loud enough, I am. I'm not repeating it. And just kind of seeing where it goes, so, yeah, we'll be meeting again, in the first week of December, so. Remind me how many people are on the committee, please? I believe 13, we had a couple people fall out. I'd have to double check at the number. Okay. I don't know it off the top of my head. It's not 13, though. And discussions have been, do you feel like they're producing what you had hoped for? Yeah, I think that, well, I mean, what you hope for, it's such a hard, I told Steven, what are you trying to do to me, putting me on this? I feel like it's such a challenge because you're trying to consider what your community might feel about the whole process. You're trying to, but then you only have so many committee members and then you have staff and you're trying to look at all these different avenues and through the previous meetings when we had done East Meadow, we talked about, alterations to the building but, is that feasible? Is that long-term solution? So just kind of hashing out and having all those conversations and making sure you're really looking into every possible solution, but at the same time not spinning your wheels and wasting time on things that, it's a dream. Yeah, great, that'd be lovely, but is that ever actually going to happen, or can it actually happen? And just kind of having those discussions and but there's no easy solution, I guess, either. When you're never going to please everybody, we talk about that. So at this point, we feel like we've spent a lot of time looking at all these different things. So now we need to start figuring out, okay, what are the potential options if they are there? Because I feel like the last time, one of the biggest problems was, we were given one option, it's that option only, there's nothing else, and this is why. And it felt not all the way planned out, and I think that gave families a lot of reservations because it was like, oh, we'll do it, and it'll be fine. But it wasn't like this is what's going to happen. It wasn't as detailed, and I feel like a lot of families felt like they needed that. So we just have to really kind of dive in a little bit more into stuff and make it more of a thought out presentation plan of A, B, C, D, whatever we end up coming up with. So
have you guys talked about surveying schools, like the school community and the community at large?
Yep.
Because I haven't seen anything, so I didn't know.
Yeah, we haven't. Yeah, we've talked. That's kind of where our last meeting kind of led.
Okay.
So, yep.
And do you feel like you've got all of the correct stakeholders involved in your meeting, like in your group? Do you think that you've got enough representation from the different areas?
I know, that's a challenge too. So the last meeting I had asked, because we had a community member step down, so I was like, should we ask for another community member? But then you get to that point too, that, you know, you're meeting an hour at a time. These are people's precious time too. Do you add someone new in at that point? Be like, okay, by the way, this is all the stuff we already talked about. We are talking with our next meeting to go over to the high school and do a tour at the high school, which will be kind of interesting to see too, and kind of the history of the building. Again, this is a tricky time too. We had put our bid out with MAS, MSBA. So, you know, but again, how many of these things can we wait with? We've reached out to the town to get, I say we, Megan, I thank her because she's doing so much, reached out to the town as far as our census numbers for our upcoming kindergarten groups and kind of looking at that. The numbers, you know, whether it was COVID or people are just moving in, the numbers start to increase a little bit too. We've talked about, you know, reaching out to Children First, because also we have to realize that they maybe do have some of our kindergartners, but then we come back. So we kind of need to plan for that when we're doing our kindergarten planning numbers and how many kids we school choice in going forward. You know, rather than having our target number of being 20 per student, well, how many of our potential kindergartners might be at Children First? Like, the discussions have been.
Right, but I think we have a pretty good connection with Children First.
Oh,
as far as-
absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And Kathy Kelly Regan was wonderful at getting information too. Like, you know, but you're diving in a lot, but you're also having these meetings that are an hour, hour and a half. Like you're, you know, how many times you're trying to meet, like I said, to do the walkthrough over at the high school. So, but at the same time, you feel that time is passing, you know, so that you're trying to really make sure that you're covering all the bases and getting into it. I would say it's a challenge too a bit because we do have staff which are volunteering their time. Again, thankful to them to participate. But you know, so the time frames were hard. Community members wanted a later time, teachers wanted an earlier time, so we are trying to go back and forth a little bit. We are doing a little bit remote too, that way more people can participate. So, you know, like anything else, it's a challenge trying to get everyone together, and but we're doing it. So, but some people had fallen through, and so.
Have you
know.
already toured East Meadow as a group?
Yes, we had done that over the summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Those are my questions that I've been thinking
Yeah.
about.
Yep, yeah, because that's one of the things we have said, like, how do we reach out to everybody to know? But again, you're gonna hear from some people that, you know, they have a certain feeling, opinion on certain areas, and then you're not gonna hear from others, and, you know, whether or not we would, you know, our community is not just parents. Ultimately, it's their kids going to school, so it's very important to hear from them, but our community is beyond that too,
Right.
so.
Excellent. Does anyone else have any questions? 'Cause I sort of just monopolized that. Sorry about that.
Not yet.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Audrey and Megan, and I think part of the reason that we talked about doing it this way is, you know, some of the points Audrey made, but we also felt there was also a perception or a feeling out there that there wasn't a dialogue, there wasn't a discussion in the last time, and I think, you know, this, just Audrey's report out tonight is evidence, like, there's an ongoing discussion, decisions aren't being made in haste, and we're thinking about all these different things, and I think probably thinking about things that others may not have ever considered when thinking about the impact of these changes. So I certainly appreciate your work, and I know you probably didn't know what you were
Right.
getting into when I asked you, but
Well, I feel like sometimes, you know, in that role of facilitating, you're trying to step back. I know Megan does that a lot, and I'm like, no, I have something to say. I can't help it. Hang on. Like,
Yeah.
I'm like, not to throw a monkey wrench, but what about this, or what about this? And, you know, so we're really trying to make sure, but at the same time, too, it was at our last meeting that people were like, okay, we keep saying the whatabouts, like, now we kind of need to start moving forward. We were like, okay, good point.
That's
Like,
great.
and it was good to have someone kind of, you know, bring that forward, too. So, and it was a community member, so, you know.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay, next up, new business, and first is the Daily Dino.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Joe Corshane and Ms. Molly Hurd, two of our teachers at the junior senior high school. They are collaborating to create a school newspaper. So we're really in the infancy stages, but excited about the work that they're doing, and it's really, they've taken like multiple classes and combined them, and they're working on so many different things. So we've talked about bringing in staff and highlighting some of the new things that we're doing. So this is an opportunity that I wanted to bring them in so they can kind of explain their vision and answer some questions that you might have, so people can be on the lookout. I anticipate, having worked with Joe in the past in Holyoke, this will evolve over time, and there's certainly opportunities for student leadership and all these things that we talk about that are important skills for our students to have as Granby graduates. So I don't know if we want to kind of move Adam out for a little bit and they can take these two seats. Don't have to ask him twice.
He's like, I am.
I gotta come back or no?
Yeah.
Not
Yes.
expect to get right up to the big table.
Yes.
So, this is- All right. You want me to say?
Yeah, go for it.
How we doing? So, Joe Corshane,
Molly Hurd,
English teacher at the high school.
librarian.
So this year, we ran an elective that we're calling video journalism. That really, I think, is the first step in what we hope is going to be a really vibrant online school newspaper coming out of the school. And our goal with it is, sometimes you have electives that just kind of, they're fun and they live in their own little world, but we're trying to make this kind of a project-based, more experiential thing. So we've got students that are taking on the role of journalists, and they're not pretending. They're actually going out and doing the interviews and crafting the stories and editing, and we're having discussions about your language isn't very clear here and how are people going to interpret that. And the nice thing about publishing online is they know that it's going to be out there and it's going to be published, and that really holds them accountable and really wants them to work hard. Molly, I don't know if you want to talk about the video aspect.
Yeah, so Alex helps. We work on helping students create video journalism. Joe focuses a lot on written articles. I focus a lot on video journalism and podcasting. So students are learning how to use that camera right there, the JVC cameras, lavalier mics, Yeti mics. They're learning how to use video editing software in order to produce their work and publish their work. And it's really been amazing to see what they are learning to do with this technology, and how confident they've become with how it works, the ins and outs, not just using the camera, which a lot of them are very nervous about using those cameras because they're quite expensive. But also, we've had some students create amazing video edits, and they've really stepped into their own. They feel like video journalists. They know what they're doing. So it's really exciting to see them take on those roles.
And I think long-term the benefit of a program like this is obviously there's immediate academic benefits to the students, and they also get a bit more of a voice and a platform than they've had before. And it's also, I think, beneficial to the school at large, because if you actually take a look at the site right now, you'll see that it is a school newspaper, but it's also kind of a window into the school community for the outside, because you've got photo galleries of how people dressed up at Halloween, you've got reports on student athletes, you've got, opinion pieces. And so it really does kind of function, if it's running correctly, it takes away the isolation of school and try to invite everybody into the school community. And so it is in the early stages, but long term, that's kind of the goal.
And so much research tells us that choice is incredibly important in engaging students in their learning. And one of the things that we're offering students is choice. They get to choose what they're reporting on, what medium they use to report it, and we've seen it pay off. They become really engaged in the work that they're doing, and it's wonderful to see.
And so we just anticipate this year we had a group of students who chose the class either out of curiosity or just put their finger on it.
Yeah.
And so we anticipate as the years go on, we kind of see interest growing in this, and students coming in to take on leadership roles and put that on their resumes and apply for colleges and show off their online portfolio and things like that, so.
There are a couple students that we already have our eye on for leadership roles and who seem very interested in taking on those roles. And we hope they're undergrads, or undergraduates for the most part, underclassmen.
Undergraduates.
So undergraduates.
Oh, undergraduates.
How old are these kids we've been working with?
They're all undergraduates. They're underclassmen for the most part, so we hope to keep them on until they're seniors so that they become strong student leaders for our school newspaper and role models.
Is it a full year class or is it a semester class?
Right now it's semester, but much of the students are signed up for both semesters.
Okay.
I think there's a few tweaks we'd like to make schedule-wise, and having it be a full year one would be one of them going forward, so, yeah.
Excellent. Any questions? I saw an issue. I don't know if you've had more than one, but I thought it was great.
Yeah, there's a link in the document too, if you want to check it out.
Okay, I was gonna say
Yeah.
where they're publishing their video
Yeah.
journalism.
Yeah.
It was already on social media. I know I had seen it and sent it to a few people. I was so impressed with it. And it
Yeah.
was just like the first like snippet of it. And it was awesome.
Thank you.
We've been adding more and more every day.
So great.
And it lives on the website?
Lives on the website, so it's not like we have to do an issue and an issue and an issue. It's just kind of rolling. If we did one or two a week, that would be ideal, and hopefully we'll make that, so,
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome.
It's exciting.
I do have one quick, is this potentially going to be like an after-school also, or?
Yes,
Okay.
we kind of, as students, kind of step up in those leadership roles. I mean, we already have a photographer who's really dedicating a lot of outside school time. But I kind of, like, when we have like an editor-in-chief who's kind of managing the thing, like, I would imagine there'd be a lot of after-school meetings with us. And so, sorry, go ahead.
I also want to open it up. It's a high school class. I also want to give middle schoolers a chance to get a taste. If we have it as an after-school program, we could have some 7th and 8th graders in there who might want to dip their toes into it. And then that way, by the time they get to high school, they are ready to be really engaged in this, want to take the class.
Perfect.
How many students do you guys have in the class?
I think 26.
26 right now, I think, so,
26.
yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
So I have another question. You said right now it's getting the outside community to look at the inside community of the school. Eventually, will it be the students interacting with the outside community, or?
Yeah. There's kind of logistical hurdles. We had a
Correct,
student that
yeah, I
wanted to do a story about the closing of, what's the,
The
Happy Days?
Happy Days?
So he emailed the owner, and the owner said, "Come meet me at noon," and he was like, "Well, I can't do that." So, there's logistical stuff, but absolutely, and I can even see, even though it lives at the high school, I mean, I could potentially see, depending on scheduling and flexibility, if a senior wanted to come over to East Meadow and cover a school event going, that would be really cool too,
Yeah.
so, for sure, yeah.
A lot of fun too. Of those 26, like, what is the ratio of doing like the written traditional publishing versus the video publishing?
We've got about 5 students who are regularly doing video work, who've decided that this is what they're really interested in. They're doing segments. We've got, I think, 4 students who are doing podcasting pretty regularly. And then kind of intermittently, we've had a couple more, 5 or 6 students who have done some video work and some writing work. And then I think,
Yeah, and we had their first story was limited to 2 things. They had to limit it to something local in Granby, in the school or the town, and they were allowed to kind of group up and work together. And now that that's done, they're kind of going off individually. So some students are just trying out different things to see what really fits them the best. So.
And I just want to say, we do GCAM, well, me, really goes in once a week at least to go in and help out with any technical issues or any ideas of editing and stuff like that. I've actually have 2 groups of students, well, 4 students really, helping out with some of GCAM's projects right now. We have 1 student who's going to help edit the Veterans Day ceremonies. We have 3 students helping us out with a senior athlete video for us, to getting interviews for that, so we could put together for our final product at some point. So, last year, right, we we got, it's grown, it's built up since last year. And I'm going into my second year in GCAM leadership. This is amazing, and I really, really enjoy working with, we have Ms. Hurd and Mr. Corshane. So this benefits us, this benefits the community, it benefits the schools. So I just want to say thank you to the schools for letting us be in the schools and helping out.
Yeah, and we want to say thank you to Alex. I think GCAM's been
A huge.
the past 2 years alone, what
Right.
GCAM has done for this community between filming meetings and games and everything has been incredible. And I think my first year as principal, I started talking to Trisha Woods, and we were trying to figure out what this collaboration would look like, and we tried things, and it kind of took a windy road, but I think we're finding where we fit together. And it's been due in part to Alex's persistence and willingness to go the extra mile, so we certainly appreciate that.
And obviously, as we all see, we built up, there are winding roads still, but it's getting less and less, and things are getting better and better. So, without the schools' participation, this wouldn't be a thing. So,
GCAM has provided us with so many resources and so much support. We really couldn't have done this without them and without their collaboration on this project. So Alex has been so wonderful. Thank you.
Excellent. I'm really excited about this. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah,
Appreciate
thank
it.
you.
We voted?
We,
No,
it
that's
has,
a
there's
no
an error.
vote.
There's
That
no
was an error.
vote.
Sorry.
It was informational, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Next up is the Winter Running Club. Do we need to promote Brittany?
Yes,
I don't know,
Alex.
I went right to looking at Ally like, yep.
Does that last club not need a vote for it?
No, it's a course. Yes, please. Thank you.
I unmuted. You good?
There you go. Hi, Brittany.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. Oh, I hear the lag.
You want to talk to us about the Winter Running Club?
Yeah, hold on. I'm just trying to get the lag off. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, so we are looking to start a winter track club. This is going to be run by our cross-country coach, Suzanne Williams. And basically, the overall, what we're trying to do here is basically grow interest in the sport. We want to get the program to a place where student athletes can compete at the MIAA and the PBIAC level in upcoming years. Granby currently doesn't offer a winter track club or a program at all, so this will, be open to all students in grades 7 through 12. And then hopefully, depending on the club's success, we envision this as a first step to offering a spring program. So if this does, go through, we are looking to begin the first week of December. This will be a club, therefore there's going to be no sign-up fees for student athletes. And this is going to, again, prepare student athletes to compete, hopefully at the MIA and the PBIAC level. And I truly believe that it's a good place for student athletes to learn life skills, decision-making, leadership skills, work independently, and also as a team. And again, this is going to be inclusive for all levels and definitely all fitness levels as well.
So you said it's a club, so there won't be Family ID user fees, but we'll be paying the coach?
Correct.
And so we have the money to do that then?
Yes, I spoke with Adam.
So we had some savings in a couple coaches that resigned that were making the top, hiring ones that are not making as much, so we're using those savings to be able to fund that position.
Excellent. Any other questions?
I just had a question. How many students did we have participate over the fall for cross-country? Because that's kind of the kiddos that we're focusing on for this club, I assume?
Right, so there are some interested, and then we are looking to bring up, even younger students, so, the track and, the cross-country program can grow. To be honest, the actual numbers, I'm not positive. I know Sue is on here, she does have an exact number, but she did, tell me that there are a lot of kids that are looking to, who was in cross-country to bring it over to track, and there are additional student athletes that are very interested.
Great, so I guess that's really where I was going. Like, did we kind of scan the population to see if there was going to be interest in this, and there is?
Yeah, so Suzanne, I know, mentioned it to a lot of the student athletes that she has on cross-country. Had a lot of parents reach out as well, with younger student athletes that are interested. And we actually have a sign-up sheet in front of the main office for all the other sports that are available for the winter.
Awesome. And would this be in the gym at the high school?
So this will take place usually partially in the hallways, and then if the cafeteria is available, they will be in there as well.
Oh, very cool.
That was my question.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome.
And will this club be a co-op like the cross-country was?
Yes.
Excellent. So, and which schools are we opening that up to?
It's going to be grades 7 through 12.
Schools? Not
Just
schools. So, because
Just
I thought
so not
cross-country
co-op.
was a co-op, no?
Yes, but this is a club, so you have to get co-ops approved and all of that. So this is just for friendly interest.
All right, great, thanks. And so you need a vote from us?
Yes.
Can I have a motion to approve the winter running club?
I'll make a motion to approve the winter running club.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Approved unanimously. Next up is.
Thank you, Brittany.
Thanks,
Thank
Brittany. Next up is enrollment.
So, can you promote Stacy, actually, Alex? Sorry, I know I said before, just in case there's questions that I can't.
Is this in the folder somewhere?
No, it's in our,
School resources thing. Yes, Stacy, please.
when you go to our 21, 22 folder, it's in resources. What it's called?
It's just the dashboard, it's just been
Yeah.
updated, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
it'll say school
Oh, I see.
committee resources. And then school enrollment information.
We lost another 100 students, right?
No, we're up 5 from last month.
Well, it says October 2020 enrollment 606.
Yep, so you probably just need to click on the filter and click all
Reading.
3 lines.
Did the format change again,
So
or am I in the
resident,
wrong one?
non-resident, and tuition.
It's late. I don't feel like it. Someone just moved it.
Oh. Still uploading.
Mine's here.
Yeah, it was just
You would've heard
loading. I
from
was
me
like,
if you
what's
lost
taking
100.
Yeah,
That's what I have. I'm like, what is happening?
so you gotta hit the
You
filter.
just have to click the filter
And do
and
all
then click
3.
on all 3, tuition,
So you've
resident,
got
and
one of
non-resident.
3. So we started in August at 718, then went down in September, and then back again in October. Is it the same 5 students?
It's not.
How funny. Hey, people can't make up their minds.
I'm just very happy to see we
Why
don't lose
is
100
yours
students
different?
in a
What
month.
did I not
Yes.
click?
I just said to Jen, if we lost 100,
Filter.
you would hear from
That
me.
little
Carrot.
Okay.
Then check box, check mark. All 3. Check mark them,
All right.
then hit OK. There you go.
So it's kind of a consistent number then, the 5?
Yeah, so we're seeing some fluctuation,
That dropped
right? Being halfway through November,
That's all
I'm not going to speak too much on it, but you continue to see
1, 2, and 3.
a handful or less in and
I
out.
was
And-
thanking her.
But it's the big, like we keep saying, it's those big swings in the summer that you see probably, those are the biggest swings that we typically see. Sometimes in some districts, I don't know, historically here, you'll see a bump in January. But really the biggest swings tend to be in the summer.
Does anybody have any questions?
Is it kind of late for a withdrawal for charter in November? Is that kind of uncommon?
You know, sometimes charter school, like a student might not get accepted and then a spot opens and then they move in,
That was my
so.
question. I know sometimes if we get delayed data, sometimes from those and you're waiting to hear about.
Yeah, again, and this, like, that particular one, I can't say for sure, but it could have happened October 1st too, so.
Right.
But, yeah, every now and then, depending on the program and the enrollment there, if a spot opens at a place, sometimes you'll see a student go, and that could happen at any time. Sometimes even in the spring, you'll see a student that has an opportunity and they take it even then.
Mhm.
Hi, Stacy, thank you.
Hi,
I don't-
Stacy.
Just a quick question, because I noticed this when we were doing the school capacity meeting, was previously, I thought we had had 9 in K. And it says 8, so we were like, oh, maybe she's still working on it.
Oh, what an echo. Let me just pull it up.
I started to track, I was like, was it last month that
Where are
it
you
changed?
looking? The school choice seats, because I see 9.
Are you looking at resident, non-resident?
Non-resident,
tuition?
yeah, resident, non-resident tuition enrollment.
I can go back. I can't do all of them on camera because it has student David attached to it.
Oh, absolutely, no, I don't need to on the screen.
Yeah. But after that, I can look into it, Audrey, and I'll let you know.
Okay, great. Because we were just trying to look at our data going forward.
Correct.
So in school choice seats, it says school choice applications approved 9, but when you're in the above one, non-resident is 8. Do you see what I'm talking about?
I do. I want to say we had one withdraw
Okay. Sounds
last
good.
month.
Okay. I don't know how you do it. This data makes my eyes like, so I was like, wait, I just need to check. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I see what
Yeah.
you're saying, but wouldn't there be a withdrawal out that we would see on
Right,
there?
exactly.
Yeah, I think it was last month, September.
Either
There was
way,
a
yeah.
kindergarten withdrawal, yeah.
Yeah, so, but under school choice seats, it says applications approved, just seats remaining 1.
So
So should
But
that
it would
be
be
2?
2.
It should be 2.
Exactly.
It should be 2, yeah, 8 and 2.
Which I'm fine with, but that was the only thing I had noticed. But otherwise, it looks great. It is nice to
Thanks.
see this like this every, checking in on it.
Yeah, I like seeing it once a month. It's not gonna be a surprise for anybody where all the numbers are. So we look like we should be.
Did we ever have a tally of how many are we keeping track of that are at Children First that are coming to us for next year, or we wait until closer to for that kind of projection to know?
We generally wait until kindergarten enrollment starts. We'll reach out to them, or they'll reach out to us, giving us what they think will be coming to Granby for first grade.
Because as of right now, do we know what that would potentially be?
Isn't there like?
I don't. I'm not sure if Bill can speak to it. He may know.
Wasn't it like 6? I feel like there was.
I want to say 5 or 6, but I don't want to,
I know they had like their biggest class last year, and it
Yeah, but it
seems.
wasn't just Granby. I feel like when Donna
Absolutely,
came. I
correct.
feel like when Donna
Yes.
came in and did her.
Yeah, presentation.
Presentation, I think she said there was 5 or 6 Granby students that were staying for kindergarten because it worked, especially this year with the COVID situation.
Absolutely. Gives them continuity of care guaranteed.
we have it somewhere, I can find it for you, because you asked for that a couple months ago at the beginning of the school year when we were talking about the school choice in.
Yep.
And class sizes, we do have that somewhere, so.
Okay.
We can find it tomorrow. And I remember we specifically talked
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
And there's no guarantee that they'll come here because, they
Absolutely.
could end up
Yep.
going to,
School choice or, yeah.
school
Yep.
choice or
Never know.
school or something.
Absolutely.
So Let's hope they come here, but
Yes, of course.
we want them to
Bring
come
them
here.
on.
Any other questions? I feel like we've finally narrowed it down, so Stacy, thanks a lot for all of your work on this, because it's understandable to, at least, I think, based on the number of questions we don't have this time, I think we finally narrowed it down to where we want it
It's so
to be.
nice.
Yeah.
We all look at it, and we're like, okay, good.
I understand this now, yay!
That's great.
So hopefully, and I just want to, so I guess my last little thing after I say that is, we've got that bottom, the total, so we've got charter school, and then school choice out, and then and then the next one in green is how much we're getting in, so it looks like we're about flush, right? Like it's.
That's my question.
That's
Is
from
our
last year.
That was from last year.
And we won't have that number until
Oh.
January,
Right,
February.
because we're 21, 22.
So that number is a constant. on every
That
month.
number will not, we said when we decided to put that on, like, that number will stay and only get changed once a year.
Okay.
Right.
And it says it right on there, but I was reading 21.
Well, because it'll be from our October data, right? That October date,
Yep,
but we won't get the
yep, so we'll
results
get a
until-
report from the state that says basically where everybody coming in is coming from, where everybody going out is going to, and that will provide these calculations.
So this number that we have here is what we reported in our October thing that we put out, that we published.
Of last year.
This is left.
No, up top here, like our numbers here, that we just had, it's like October 1 or something is our Sims numbers.
708.
So that 708 number is the number that we used for our Sims data that we report out to the state.
So
It was not 708, because some of the enrollments happened after the October 1st deadline. So this is encompassing the whole month of October, where Sims is looking at a snapshot of October 1st.
So it should have been 703 then, because that would have been.
It could have been.
Because that would have been the September 2021 would have been inclusive through September 30th. Okay. So when we go through and we, all of our reconciliation numbers, we would be able to pull down that and say, okay, this number matches, so these school choice calculations and everything we should be able to pinpoint it to this number.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then that will work just the way we want it to.
But it really goes to show you how, like, in my eyes too, like that system is so tricky, because here we already are up 5 kids, and we're working off of data.
Yeah, that's a whole, that's.
Yeah, and right. And there's some conversations that I think Megan's on and Stacy and I have been a part of just in the last 2 days that are like so complicated and convoluted to figure it out with multiple students in multiple districts and temporary residences turning to permanent residents. It's constant. Constant. We had one that we just found out was reported on an October Sims from another district as a Granby resident, but we didn't know they were a Granby resident until October 18th. Like, it is constant, so.
So that seems like that's a whole nother thing, but.
Right.
The reporting,
This is really helpful.
Yeah.
it's super helpful, but it goes to the bigger thing that it shouldn't be having to reinvent the wheel every time someone wants to report a number for the state based for our money. Like, it should be, either the state needs to get their act together so that we can report numbers as of 12/31 or
Yeah.
whatever, so that it's, because the fact that it can be that,
Yeah,
fluctuate that much is just, how is anyone supposed to get the right amount of money if we can't figure out who the hell belongs where?
I do have a comment on that. It's difficult. They have to take one time because they have to build a budget. So in order to do that, but if they're constantly getting changing numbers, it's hard for them to build a budget when they know they have a deadline to get it out.
Yeah.
And they have how many schools
supposed
in
to
the
be on my
state?
side, Jen.
I am on your side, but
but I
looking
think
at numbers all day.
to a point Adam's made, like, that's part of the reason that our budgeting process is so challenging, because it's all built on projections and numbers from 10 months ago.
Yeah.
Or 6 months ago, whatever it is, and it's all, which is like, our final budget that's approved is based on projections.
It's an inherent flaw. I get
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
I just don't like it. I don't have to like
No,
it.
I don't
No,
like
you
it
don't.
either.
Just did something to mine because now it moves. This one moves all the time.
Good, we're done with it anyway.
All right. Oh, look at that. Okay. Anybody else have any questions for enrollment? I think I need to stop talking now before I embarrass myself. All right, moving along.
Thank you.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thank you, Stacy.
Thank you.
You're welcome anytime.
Oops. All right, next up is enrollment. Nope,
Nope.
MCAS. I've got enrollment on the brain now. MCAS update.
All right, so we have a couple of people that are gonna come in and present.
I can leave
am
again.
gonna share, yeah, Adam can leave again. So Sue Crago, the curriculum coordinator, is gonna come in and present just a general overview, district-wide, some other key information, as it relates to the 2021 MCAS. And then, Mr. Latoy will present on East Meadow and Ms. Jordan on the junior, senior high school. So I will control the slides, I think. 1 second, Sue, I'll let you know.
It's nice to see you all in person.
Yes, thank you for coming in.
Oh, thanks for being here. Not that you had a choice, but.
All right, so, all right, slide 1, 2.
Okay, so I decided to start by talking about the acceleration roadmap, and I don't know if, have any of you heard of that yet? Okay, so the Department of Ed released this acceleration roadmap, and it's basically guidance that they set out. It's pretty well laid out, actually, so that schools could strategically prepare students for doing grade level work, because they knew that there would be some learning loss because of this, the way school had been interrupted for the last 2 years. And so they laid out, some strategies that school districts could and should use. And so we've been working off of that since, I guess, when it first came out. We talked about it at DLT, and Stephen and I took a closer look at it and thought it's really useful guidance for us. It's well researched and kind of helps us make decisions. And so basically, one of the tenets of the roadmap is what the state, I think, was worried about is that teachers would perceive, if kids had learning loss, they would just go back and teach, like if they're in 4th grade, they'd go back and teach 3rd grade skills, and then the kids would never be caught up to grade level. They'd always be behind that way. And so there is still teaching that happens for past skills, but it's not, the whole group isn't supposed to get that. It's not remediation the way you know it. It's more targeted, so you figure out what students need which skills, and they're taught in the context of of the grade level skills and content that they're being taught in the moment. So, if they're learning a 4th grade math skill, but the teacher realizes that there are like 5 kids who don't know how to do a certain thing that they need to know before they can do this math skill, the teacher should take those 5 kids and teach them that one skill in the context of, I'm going to teach you this so that you'll be able to do this, instead of just going back and reteaching all of 3rd grade. So the roadmap is laid out around 3 overarching priorities. The first one is about fostering a sense of belonging for the students, and also having a partnership among the students and the families with the school. And we've been working on that in both buildings for the gen ed students as well as for the special ed kids and other subgroups that are in the school district. But our primary focus right now, as far as social emotional learning, has been on the gen ed classroom, because we're finding, and this is aside from MCAS, but we're finding that there are a lot of kids who, so if you think about it, like if there's a 5th grader, the last time they had a full year of regular school, they were in 2nd grade. And so we're finding this across the nation, really, that kids are really struggling to learn how to be a 5th grader when the last time they really did a normal year of school was 2nd grade. It's because the stakes are higher, the expectations are higher. And so, we're trying to, build in some SEL skills with the teachers, so the teachers can help the kids adjust and be, like all of us, be patient. Because the the state laid this out too, and it's nationally recognized that it's gonna take a couple years for us to really get back to normal. But these last two bullet points have to do directly with the MCAS, and that is that we should continuously monitor student understanding, so that's something we're trying to get teachers to move towards, and that's using our IXL program, which I'll talk a little bit about later, and the DIBELS program, so IXL is the testing, benchmark testing that we're using for math throughout the district, and then for reading at the 6th through 12th grade levels, or 7th through 12th grade levels. And we're using a test called DIBELS. If you're not in education, you may not know what that means, but it's basically like a reading comprehension ELA skills type test that now can be given from kindergarten to 6th grade. You can do it actually to 8th grade, but we're using it to 6th grade. So IXL has built into it interventions that it's almost a curriculum in a way. You shouldn't rely on it solely, but it'll target, like show you that kids are lacking a certain skill, and then teachers can assign work to the kids to work on those particular skills. So it helps teachers individualize instruction. DIBELS has a similar, we purchased a computerized digital platform that goes along with the DIBELS test. The test is given to each student individually by the teachers, and then it identifies skills gaps in the student as far as ELA skills go. And so we're going to use that in conjunction with the MCAS scores we're going to talk about now to understand like where our students are and where we need to target more instruction. And the other thing is to enable strong grade appropriate instruction with the scaffolds that students need to be able to do the work. And we've been doing learning walks at both schools every week. And so this is one of the things we're taking a look at, like our students working on grade level, our teachers checking for understanding, that kind of thing. And we're moving towards giving teachers more direct feedback. Right now, the feedback is pretty general, but we're going to move probably after the first of the year, so maybe after January or in January, to try to give them more specific action steps that they can take to get better, and also praise where they're doing things that are really great. And we've seen some really great teaching, and I do want to say, we did go into Joe and Molly's class, and it was so fun to see the kids, like they're all doing their things. Everybody's busy, everybody's engaged. There's kids in the closet doing podcasting. They were just, it was great to see them. Really excited and just vibrant. So the 2021, now focusing completely on MCAS. I also want to let you know, I did put a link to the acceleration roadmap for school leadership if you want to take a look at it at some point. I put a few links in here just in case you wanted to do a deeper dive. So in 2021, the state realized, we were out of the box as far as hybrid, remote, and in-person learning. And so they realized they needed to make some adjustments to the MCAS. And so these are the ways that things were different this year or last year than they had been ever before. And so students could test remotely and in person. And there was some concern that if kids tested remotely, their parents might take the test for them. But the state actually found that that wasn't the case. They found that the scores were consistent between both locations, I guess. Usually the students take 2 sessions in math and in English. but they narrowed it down to one session each, so it's only one day and one session. And I will say that some of the students here at East Meadow, I'm not sure about 7th and 8th grade, they were given different versions in the same class. And so some students had to write essays and others apparently did not, it seems. We're not sure because we asked for or found the student responses, and we were missing a whole bunch of student responses, so we're not sure why that is. It could be that they were just given a different version of the test and didn't have to write the essay. The other thing that DESE did was they recalibrated how they did the scoring so that we could still use the data from 2021 to compare it to the 2019 and the years before the pandemic, to make it a fair comparison. And the other thing that's different is they're not using this data for accountability purposes, determinations for the schools. So the data, you know, in some ways this is the ideal. It's useful to us to see where the kids were on that day, you know, at the end of last school year. And so coming into this year, it gives us a sense of what we need to focus on, and which kids need a little more attention. So now I'll talk about our district-wide data a little bit, that just give you an overview of us. So what I did first was create a table to let you know like what the MCAS scoring looks like. And there are 4 categories. There's exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, partially meeting, and not meeting. And so in 10th grade, the kids that score in the not meeting category have to retake the test in order to get and pass it, in order to get a diploma. But I also gave you the score breakdowns here. And in the lower 2 categories, those are kids that score in those areas we need to take a look at closer and see if and what kind of supports they need in those subject areas. What we did find was when we took a look at the essays that the kids wrote, there are a lot of kids who, we were trying to figure out why this is, and Allie will speak more to this a little bit, but, and Bill too, but we were trying to figure out why, because our writing scores are bad, I'll talk about that in a minute, but a lot of kids just either didn't really answer the question, wrote a sentence, wrote something that had nothing to do with the question. So some kids blew it off, and some kids took it seriously. And the feedback that we got was that a lot of kids, if they're not in 10th grade, they think the MCAS doesn't matter, you know, because it doesn't count against them in any way. It doesn't go in their permanent record for college or anything like that. However, it does impact the district, and it, you know, if they don't really try, it gives us a false sense of where they are academically. So we're trying to shift things around to let the kids, have the kids change their attitude a little bit about the test and take it more seriously. But I think the principals will talk about that. So the next slide.
I'm just gonna say, I feel like I feel like that mentality is probably more a function of being in a pandemic where school didn't feel real to the kids regardless.
Yeah, and that could be.
I mean, just between my 2 girls, we're awful parents and we're like, you are doing school, and other parents were like, no, and it didn't matter. So that when they did come back in and were taking tests, the mentality, like my girls were like, you're going to bed early, you got big, you know, tests tomorrow, and other kids are staying up until whenever because it didn't matter. So
yeah, and
I just think it's functional of the environment that we've been in for the past 18 going on 47 years.
I'd agree with you. It feels like 47, you're right. But yeah, I think that's partially true, but also historically, before the pandemic even, our writing scores were a problem. And so we're recognizing that, and we're going to try to do something about it. So if you, so this slide shows you our ELA and math scores percentage-wise, comparing 2019, which was pre-pandemic, to 2021. and how we were in each category. So you can see that we did better in 2019, but it's not a catastrophic difference, really. And we also reflect the national trend, which is that kids suffered more learning loss in math than they did in ELA.
Is this actual number of students?
These are percentage of
Okay.
all, and what I did was average all of the grade levels
So
to
this
get
is
these.
3 through 10? Or?
Yeah, except for ninth grade, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, this is everybody in the district. So some highlights. Digging through the data, we had 100% participation rate in what are called our subgroups, which are high-need students, low-income students, ELL students, and students with disabilities, which those are generally the kids who miss the test, who don't show up for it. But we had 100% participation, which is great. And they also outperformed their counterparts on the state level in nearly every category. So we're doing something right there. And I think some of those kids were in person a little more than others. So that may have made the difference. We also had an overall participation rate of 99%, which also outpaced the state average of 95% for grades 3 through 8 and only 90% for 10th graders. So our kids are engaging in a test, which is good. And we also averaged fewer students than the state average, not meeting expectations, which meant basically more of our students passed than the state average. So also good. Some areas that we noticed for growth, like I mentioned, the ELA, the writing problem. So we're consistently below the state average in open response questions, and this past year was by 17 points we were below the state average. And that's from all the grades together. I will say in third grade, they were a little above the state average, I think 2 points. And I tried to dig into why third grade was an anomaly in our district. And I think it was because in third grade, they were asked to write a narrative. And in every other grade, they were asked to write an essay, a nonfiction piece or two. And so that's the only difference I could see. We're also considerably below the state average as far as constructed responses are in math. And those are questions like, where they ask the kids to come up with their own equation or interpret data from a graph or a table. So it's not a multiple choice question. And then this is a category that is consistent throughout the years, if you go back 5-7 years, that we tend to have a small percentage of our students who score exceeds in both ELA and in math. And so this past year it was 6% in ELA and 2% in math. And I just want to talk for a minute, like one of our goals is to move more kids into the exceeds category, because if a student exceeds in either math or English and proficient, or meets expectation in the other subject area, and science is included in that. So you have to have exceeds in one of the three categories and proficient in the other two. The student can qualify for the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship, which can help a kid pay for some tuition money towards any of the state schools if they're going to go into a certificate program or an associate's degree at HCC. So I included a link for the John and Abigail Adams Scholarship there so you can see that. But I think it would be great if more of our kids would be eligible for those scholarships. So some of the actions that we're taking district-wide, we are doing a writing across the curriculum focus, and I also put a link here to 2 focus standards by grade level. So you can, if you click on that link, you'll have a document that goes from pre-K to 12 for 2 different types of nonfiction writing. One is argument, and the other is basically expository, like explaining something. Both nonfiction writing, not narrative. For a couple reasons. I mean, a lot of the questions in ELA now deal with nonfiction topics, or they're text-based. And so the kids are being asked to do some pretty complicated things, especially beyond, I guess, 4th grade or 5th grade and up, where they have to do comparison. Like, they have 2 or 3 passages that they have to work with at the same time, and they're doing it on a computer screen. So it's hard for them to do that, you know, and they're mostly on Chromebooks, which have little screens. So we want the teachers to, Steve and I have talked about this, that it's like training the muscle, the testing muscle, of you're gonna have to do it in this platform, so get used to the platform and get comfortable with it. Because I don't know, you know, I mean, kids were on computers a lot last year, but I don't know if they ever had to compare 2 texts at a time on a screen. It's hard to do.
And I think we want to be clear, like, we're not saying we're asking people to teach to the test, but this is a skill that students may not have, that they need to be able to get through the test. So in some way, we do need to build that muscle, but it's not about teaching to the test, and I don't want that to get lost here.
Yeah. So in math, it's a little more complicated because there are multiple skills that need to be focused on based on the grade level. So what the teachers will do is comb through the MCAS data, and the two principals will show you what their teachers have identified as areas of weakness, where teachers will target those specific areas. And then the other thing is, we want to use the MCAS, the IXL, and the DIBELS data. And this is just a practice, honestly, that we would like to see going forward. It doesn't really have much to do with MCAS. But MCAS is just one of the data points that we can look at. But use those data points to help teachers be more targeted in their instruction for both students who struggle, but also students who exceed and need something more. Because I think there's always a tendency, and you know this, like to teach to the middle, you know, or to spend a lot of time remediating or teaching to the lower kids to try to get them caught up. And so the kids who could be moving forward are just waiting. And we want to avoid that going forward. So I think that ends my section.
It does.
Does anybody have any questions for me? Or actually, we can save them till the end, right?
It's up to you if you want.
Just a quick question I had about DIBELS is, are we doing the progress monitoring or
Yes.
just the?
Yes, we talked about that. We actually had a meeting yesterday? Seems like 100 years ago.
It was yesterday.
And teachers are starting to do the progress monitoring, and they're seeing how it's really beneficial, actually. So
Because
yes,
even
they
with DIBELS, like sometimes it's the doing the test, you know, that they're not used to the notion of how to do the test, and that's what you find too a little bit versus, you know,
right.
hey, we're gonna do this one time, and then we're not gonna do it again, and then you're gonna do it again later, but you've only done it once before.
Yeah, and our goal is to really be consistent with our formative or benchmark assessments, so students get into the practice of doing them. So when you do it in first grade, second grade, third grade, 3 times a year, hopefully after 1 year through, you're used to the functionality of the test, and you can start focusing more on the content. And so, like, we believe being consistent with that is really important to us. So, because we haven't had a consistent benchmark assessment, and so we're going to stick to that, and we think it's going to provide important information for current teachers, like their current teachers, of course, but also as they get promoted from grade to grade, that those teachers are going to have a snapshot right when they walk in the door.
Yeah, and like IXL is, in particular is aligned with the Massachusetts state standards. So, you know, if the teachers can target the lessons for their kids or practice for their students based on the areas directly related to the frameworks where their students are struggling. So it's great information. And there are also a lot of things to celebrate too, because, you know, we tend to celebrate the kid who gets straight A's all the time, and which is great. But there are also those kids who work really hard and maybe were behind, and they've worked really hard and they've they've made a lot of growth. Well, now we can see the growth and celebrate that too. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Latoy. Just let me know when you want me to.
Okay. So, one of the things that I want to start off with is, we started the year this year with the growth mindset theme. And, we're using that as we're looking at all this data and the assessments, and we're talking to the students about it. And as Sue just mentioned, we're using this as conversations with the students about, it's not just an assessment, it's not just for the state, it's so that we can look at these numbers and you can do better. And actually, one of the teachers just emailed me this afternoon that she did the DIBELS, and she was doing the progress monitoring with one class today and was seeing some great results and things like that. And she's gonna, get those numbers together. So that's our goal as we're moving forward is to be able to share that with the students as well and let them know that their work is paying off as we're moving forward, and that this is what it is, and that's what we're looking at. So as we go through this, just keep that in the back of your mind. That's our message to them is, and we'll talk a little bit about some things we're doing as we get to the end of our slides, but we can go to the next slide. And some of the highlights that we saw in ELA, Mr. Taylor will talk to the ELA, and I'll talk to the math. But one of the things that we tried to do was we went through the item analysis with the staff, and we looked at, where we did well, where we did, several points above the state. And then in areas that we needed growth, we looked at areas that we did, 5 or 6 points or more below the state. And those are the areas we targeted. And what we did here was just to give you a snapshot of what that might look like in each grade level. What you're seeing isn't the only ones for those grade levels, but it's just a snapshot to give you an idea of what it looks like. And, that's what we're doing. So
the highlights are the ones that we felt that we did a really nice job on, that the kids worked really hard on, and we saw progress. And usually we associated doing better than the state did on the questions through the item analysis as to something that our kids were doing really well on. Or I also took the ones where we had an 85–90% of our kids were correct with their response. So we figured that was obviously a skill. And these definitions or terms up here are a combination of three things. It could be the standard verbatim, it could be the type of question that they had, or it could be the specific language from the question, the item description. So it's kind of a mix of all three of those things, because the language of the standard sometimes can get a bit convoluted, and I'm sure you can easily pick out the ones that are straight from the standards. But if we had a multiple, for instance, an RPK 12.4, and we did 3 different questions that we were strong in those, then I put the whole standard, because that was kind of all-encompassing, versus if there was only one, and some of the standards only had one question on them, I tried to include the item description. So that's how I arrived at these. And certainly, like Mr. Latoy said, there are more than just those highlights, and certainly there's more areas, for us to grow on as well, and places to address.
Go to the next slide.
Like that. So again, the first bullet point.
So Sue talked about this a little bit, right? That, less of our students scored in the meeting and exceeding expectations in 2021 than they did in 2019, So, and that means that, it looks like most of our students fell down into that partially meeting expectations category. That's where the bulk of it is. So that's where the work's going to be, to get those students from partially meeting back up to meeting and exceeding. But, we just felt it was noteworthy to put that there, that, overall that was a trend, and there were a lot of factors involved. And you mentioned some of them, Sue mentioned some of them. We didn't get back to school till late. We came back to school a lot later than other districts, and we had remote for longer, and maybe our remote wasn't as fine-tuned as we were hoping it was, right, towards the standards and things like that. But, we've learned a lot, and now we can focus and use that data.
I think part of that is why the state's not issuing accountability ratings on it. There were so many factors that went into it. And we've also talked a lot about, because of our size, there's a certain number of students that can swing us one way or the other, and it doesn't take a lot, right? Because 6 or 7 students goes one way or the other, that could be 3 or 4 percentage points for us.
So same thing in math. We picked out a few items that, that we did really well on, and it could have been by standard, it could have been by question. The teachers looked at that. They really dug into the item analysis, and we're still digging into the item analysis. The biggest thing here is this isn't the be-all, end-all. The MCAS isn't, we're not focusing on the really what I've asked them to do is take the MCAS and now use the IXL and the DIBELS to see where that data falls, and to look at that and compare it and contrast and see, so if somebody scored really, really low on that MCAS, but their DIBELS and their IXL are at grade level or even above grade level, maybe they didn't do well on the test that day, like you said, you get your kids to school, but it doesn't mean that they were focused on that test that day, right? Or that they were taking it seriously or whatever. And so, we're taking it very seriously, but we're also trying to align it with the other data and see what that looks like. And so we had the highlights, and then we have, areas for growth. And like I said, we've taken and we've printed out the standards for each grade level, and they're itemizing it. And the great thing is we can get them into the computer so they can click right on the question, and it brings them into the MCAS question banks, and they can follow all that backwards, and go from there. So that's it for the highlights and areas for growth. We're working on that. School-based actions, I think, one of the things is we started working on writing back in 2018. We did see that writing was a little lower. We don't have a writing curriculum per se. They've done a couple different writing curriculums in the past. They've had a couple different writing programs that they've brought in, but haven't stuck with anything. And so they have a lot of training, but it was putting that training together, and we really got into it in 2018, and we were keeping up with that, and then COVID hit and we lost that. So we're picking up that momentum again, and we're going to look at that. And Sue had given them a lot of information on, the writing rubrics for each grade level, and what the writing curriculum should be for each grade level. So we're looking at that as well. Same thing in math, in-depth item analysis, targeted instruction to address where they're weak and what items they might not have done well on, and celebrating what they did well on as well. Moving forward, using the acceleration roadmap as a tool to support student learning and help the teachers as they're moving forward, because it's a daunting task. The teachers are feeling really overwhelmed, as they are everywhere, going into the classroom and being told, okay, now we've got these students with these gaps, yet they haven't been in school for 2 years, and they're behind social emotionally, and we want you to do all that. So, Stephen was great starting at the beginning of the school year with his message to them, and we reiterate that we know it's not all going to happen in 1 year, and that we want to focus on, bringing them up, but also making sure that we're being careful that we're doing it, in consistence with social emotional learning and that. So we're looking at providing additional supports where needed. We're going to offer some tutoring and some targeted interventions. We're going to meet with the students and share the data and set goals with them. We did that a couple years ago as well. We had a big goal setting day, and students had made footballs, and they put them up on the wall in here, and it was our goal bowl. and it was around the time of the Super Bowl, and they all did individual goals about how they thought they could do better, not just on the MCAS, but ways to do better. And some of it was, I could do my homework. I can go to bed a little earlier so that I'm more rested. So there were a lot of things that they put down, but it was great to start having those conversations. So we're going to do that again this year, including the growth mindset. And we've got some great ideas and some great input of things to move on and do with that as well. So we're going to include that. Continue with our look at the writing, and continue to look with IXL and DIBELS and gain an overall understanding. And it's excellent data to inform instruction. And one thing that I really want to, put out there is the staff was really eager to look at this data and work with it in spite of it all. Like, they were glad that we gave them time to dive into this and that we're giving them the opportunity to see this. So yeah, even though we could say we weren't in school long and it's where the students are at. And that's the important piece of it. So it's to meet the students where they're at and move forward. And I think the teachers were happy to have that opportunity. And that's it.
Any questions for Ms. Meadow? No?
I just have one question, I guess. In thinking about their school-based actions and knowing that teachers were looking forward to looking at the data and then thinking about those next steps, do you or they kind of know what those next steps are in terms of the tutoring and targeted interventions, and know like what that looks like? Like, if a student meets this criteria, this is where they're headed with supports or interventions, or this is how they get here, or things like that, so that they know what to expect, or you have that outlined for them and that whole process?
So that's the next step. That's one of the next steps we're working on with them, is developing what that's going to look like and which students they think will need that targeted intervention or tutoring. We do have a professional development day set up with IXL to come in and talk about using that data and what that data looks like. We talked to the teachers about whether or not that day would continue as the IXL day, or maybe be devoted back to social emotional learning, because we are seeing the need for that as well, right? Trying to get some of those things back. But that is what we're developing right now. And then we're going to put those tutoring plans in place, and we're going to put some interventions in place during the school day. Our two interventionists, our reading interventionist and our math interventionist, have really changed the way they operate this year based on the number of students that they're seeing needed intervention. So there's a lot more whole class intervention. They might be going in and doing whole class and, co-teaching and things like that. So that's where we're at with all of that. And we'll fill you in as we move forward, as we get the tutoring programs in place and we get the other things in place. We had a meeting yesterday, and that was a question from some of the teachers, was could we start the after-school tutoring sooner than later? So that's one of our goals.
Yeah, I was just, in looking at this, I can see that they're ready for that, and that's where my mind went, was like, okay, well, now what next?
Yep, and they're ready. They are already on it, and that's the next piece.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I do have a question. So when we're looking at those interventions for those students that need it, what happens to the students that are accelerated?
Same thing.
They need interventions too.
So that's our goal. And that's been one of my goals this year with Growth Mindset, is celebrating the students. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I was,
Stephen.
please.
There are students who are, and that was the purpose of trying to get these assessments in place, so that we can look at those students that are, we have students maybe in 4th grade that are at a 5th grade math level or a 6th grade math level, and trying to, work it out so we can give them the appropriate work and that we can move them forward and target the instruction towards them. That's what the differentiation has to be about, and that's been a struggle, I think, right? Because we've been so targeted on catching students up and looking at things like that, but we do have a number of students that we want to move forward and continue to work with and give them the work that they need.
So a follow-up on that is, we understand the pandemic had a lot of issues. Going forward, once we get back to whatever it is we consider normal, what happens to those students that are accelerated? Would we still keep that type of
Oh, absolutely.
place?
We started that pre-pandemic,
Okay.
was looking at that and trying to find, IXL actually is a great place to start with that, because the teachers can assign IXL levels, that are higher than where the students are at. They can work their way up through that. It's kind of like when I was in school, we had the SRAs, the silent reading books in the back of the room, and you were all at different levels. Somebody might have been in red, somebody might have been in green, and when you went back to your books, it was whatever level you were at. And IXL is kind of like that, so we can target that instruction, and we've talked about a couple other online services too that we might be able to use.
Yeah, and I think when we talk about differentiation, we're talking about accelerated students who need extensions, and also students who are struggling. I think typically people might think first about students who are struggling, but we need to push our advanced students as well.
Because I'm thinking advanced students, especially in elementary, if they're not given an opportunity to keep advancing, they wind up struggling and falling behind because they don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, so I don't foresee that going whenever it is we get back to whatever normal is. I don't see that going anywhere. I think when we talk about differentiation, we're talking about meeting students where they're at, each individual student, small groups, whole group, whatever that looks like. And I think, in some places that might be a shift in thinking, but I think we're going to continue to use that language, and that's going to be the expectation. And right now, I think rightfully so, we're trying to figure out what that right balance is in differentiation, and also the balance between the SEL support and the academic support. And I think, we're seeing it like a lot of places are seeing it like really boiling up in our lower elementary, where I think that has not been my sweet spot like in my career, but I think like that's a place there's a blind spot around supports at that age in some ways, because as you get older, typically behaviors increase and things like that. So there's these programs and supports built in, and there are some for lower elementary, but I think we all had a bit of a blind spot coming back in August. I talked at Convocation about, we're going to have to reteach our students to be students again, right? I, at that point, would be lying to you now if I said, I thought that would be behind us 3 months in at this point, and that's not. Some of our students still need that, like, expectation, that routine on what it's like to be a student. So even with that comes differentiation, so that we're supporting those students, but those students who are moving forward can continue to move forward. We don't want to stunt their growth either.
I've got one last question. The IXL data, I know when we did conferences, we got to go over, parents got to see the IXL data. Is that something, will that happen again in the spring, that we'll redo that assessment? Because that was even eye-opening to me to see the gaps within your own child. Like some were, could have been, you were all across the board, like really, really high maybe in one part and kind of lower in another. And it was really interesting. So just that we're talking about this, that was offered at conferences, that was great to really be part of really the main focus of the conference. It was so helpful as a parent to be able to see it and kind of have a glimpse of what all of this is kind of encompassing. So that was great.
Yes. So
thank you for that feedback. Yeah, for the first time in a couple years, we have a district assessment calendar now, and the DIVLs will be done again in January, and then we'll send home a parent report, which will compare the two, and then it'll be done again at the end of the year, and we'll send a final parent report home, and we'll have some method for conversation and questions and things like that. But even in the middle right now with IXL, and not to keep going, but there's room where, as the students continue working, there's real-time data check-in, so the teacher can see the progress they're making. So even at some of the conferences, the teacher was able to say, when we did the IXL the first time, they were here, but we've already seen this little bit of growth, and the teachers are using the word growth, and they're talking to parents about growth, and so and students is the next step. So that's great, and one last thing is, when I first came here, I said, we're fortunate. You're fortunate here in Granby. You're in a bubble. You have a lot of parents who are very like in, you know, they're supporting their child's education, right? And that's where this differentiation really matters, because we have parents who want their students to do well, and you're pushing your students, and the community as a whole is doing that. So the teachers, you know, need to recognize that they have students whose parents are working together with them to continue to move this forward. So there's a lot of room for growth here, you know? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hi.
Mrs. Jordan,
Good evening.
you tell me when you're ready to go.
I'm ready. So this is a first for me, so bear with me and please, I ask for your patience as I try to navigate through some of the MCAS terminology, and we tried to make this as easily digestible as possible, recognizing that some of the words, right, convoluted, and not to lose sight in what our main focus is. So there's a lot of info here in the next few slides. I'll do my best to unpack it. So this first slide you're looking at is highlights. For grades 7, 8, and 10 is highlights that you'll see. And important to note that at the end there's parentheses that state an approximate number. So for example, like the first is 11 to 15. Just want to explain to you that means above the state average. So what we had done is work in collaboration with our ELA department and our staff overall through professional development. We really looked at the item analysis and took a deeper dive into areas that we highlighted. So the 11 to 15 is above the state average, and it's not just one series of questions. So it's important to note that. We're talking about multiple choice questions, short answer. So when students are taking MCAS, we noticed that while they do well, you know, responding in like a multiple choice question, they struggle responding to the same topic, right, in another area. From another question. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. So for grade 7, we highlighted making inferences based on details from a passage and using a passage to determine the actions of an individual influence a project. In grade 8, again, it was determining main ideas of a passage, of a paragraph and or passages, and using context to determine the meanings of words. So in this area, they were 12 to 14 points above the state average. And again, this is referencing various questions. So it wasn't just one example of questions. In grade 10, we highlighted strength in analysis of reading passages to determine their meaning and comparing characters, where they were 5 to 8 points above the state average. Overall, despite COVID, our grade 10 students did perform at nearly the same percent of scoring in meets and exceeds in ELA in comparison to the 2019 test data. So in 2019, it was 61%, and in 2021, it was 59%. So while it's great to recognize areas of highlights, my focus is really areas for growth. And we started that work through really difficult conversations with our staff, is really having those moments together, saying like, we recognize with our area of strengths, but we have to look at the problem and address this. Several of our staff at the school have identified goals around some of this work, which is really nice to see. I'm definitely feeling a commitment across the staff, and have already seen improvements and things that we've already talked about that they've already started working on. I do feel it's important, though, to offer an avenue for staff to voice their concern, you know, and some of the struggles that they've faced in the past couple of years as well, because this is a real thing, you know, and they brought up a lot of good points, and also background information on things that I actually found really helpful for future planning, things that we used to offer that we no longer offer. And how can we get creative and think outside the box on weekends? I know it's not super popular to have a Saturday class, but how can we do like an online Saturday programming? So I'll let my mind wander later with all of you. So areas for growth that we recognize is drawing inferences from text. The second bullet reads more students moving into exceeding expectations category. And the third is employing pre-writing strategies for open response questions. And that's an area that came out of one of our very first conversations by an ELA department member, that when in conversations in one of our first hours of power, mentioned the fact that since transitioning from paper to online using Chromebooks, and as I used to organize the MCAS for junior high along with Miss Bannister, our guidance counselor, and we hand out scratch paper, scrap paper, but they call it scratch paper, and pretty much the entire time I collect it back. So there's that pre-writing that our students weren't doing and didn't even think twice about it really. So not having that option to do your, the first draft, their first draft was really in their computer. And yes, they do have the skills, but that was something that was like, you know what? Yes, didn't even think about that. And we're like 5 years into, using computers and online. Not that we're looking for excuses, but it makes sense. So that was an immediate intervention that we put in place to say, like, we need to start doing that in class.
They don't do it in their, like,
they do.
The way they organize their
They do,
writing?
through graphic organizers and things like that, sure. But this is different when the test day comes.
Right.
Some students have graphic organizers, not all. And graphic organizers are handed out for students on ed plans. And so
accommodation.
It's the scratch paper that you have in front of you.
Right.
Okay.
So we're seeing, right, students are going right to answering on the computer, making their edits there rather than taking some time to, so it might be their own process too.
Sure,
but
that could
something
totally be.
It feels like from when I was working in higher ed and, they don't do a lot of writing, pen to paper. It's, organizing thoughts in a computer because that's the way everything is sort of done moving forward. So in my head, when they go to answer that question, is it only a certain number of characters that they have that they can fill in the space so they can't organize, like, are the editing tools not available so they can't organize their thoughts and, jot down ideas and then go through, or is it you have to just type? I really don't know because I haven't taken.
You type right onto it, but you can certainly organize it. And
Yeah,
until you
so-
click the green button that goes to the next screen, you can certainly go back and do all that work.
So it feels like it should be both, not just pen to paper, but how to organize yourself, do a little outline in your, all right, okay.
This is what it's referring to.
But
so
it's just how you, it's a teaching thing that they're gonna have to go through in that
So
process.
that they have multiple
Yeah.
strategies that they
Okay.
can use.
So I was misunderstanding, because to me, I thought we were saying, just because they didn't write it down on paper means that they're not organizing, but I didn't know if that meant the ability, because in my head, I'm thinking to, California achievement tests, and we just had to fill in a bubble and, write on a piece of paper, so you didn't have the ability, except for your scratch paper, because anything on your test paper would, if you straight outside
Right.
the line or whatever, so you had to use that, but for me, if you're going in and we want them to be learning how to use these electronic devices, then we might need to make sure that we teach them how to use the scratch paper electronically. I don't want to lose sight of that either. Like, I don't want to go
Oh,
too much in
certainly.
one direction.
Yeah, no, certainly. I think it was something that we have an option to do better, and I can see it valuable, Junior high students, in the last bullet, junior high students developing confidence to complete open response questions more consistently. And I think we can do better there, for sure. I read all of them myself. I was interested to see what they were writing.
So we have access to all their responses. So what they put and submitted, we can print out and look at and.
By student, or is it like anonymous?
By student.
Okay.
Yeah, so like if you responded like to a question, we're like, hello, I'm bored today, and just type that, like we have that, and that is generating a conversation now between.
It's a great way
teachers.
to, but can you share it with the kids too, to like get into that ownership
get there.
piece?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, that's
Yes.
a great
You're killing me,
conversation
y'all.
starter for ownership. Like, this is what you presented, and, and how can we change that? How can we move forward from that?
Yep, exactly.
or even like at the end of like, or close to, it's like, you know, look at what you did for, like, how can we make this better?
You're
And-
stealing
sorry,
my
I
thunder.
know.
Thank
So,
you.
well, you stole mine the
Thank you,
last
Jill.
time. I was like, that's what I was gonna say.
It's the teachers
I
coming
didn't get to
out.
talk last time.
It's super exciting. So, developing confidence to complete the open response questions more consistently. Again, I've been part of the junior high process for my time here, and I definitely see there's lots of room for growth. I forgot my book. What do you mean? My book. Sorry. Thank you. I need a new one. It's filling up. So the highlights, does anyone have any questions about the ELA? The areas for improvement, areas for growth, or highlights? So highlights for math, set up in a very similar way. And this was done through an item analysis, specifically with the math department. They've done a really nice job digging into the MCAS data for grades 6, 7, 8, and 10, and really honing in on that item analysis and picking out their strengths. And their strengths, there were a lot of strengths. I broke it down as best as I could to just find a few in each grade level. In grade 7, you can see there's many strengths of proportional relationships, equivalence, probability rules, scaling factors, converting units. In grade 8, linear relationships, number system, expressions and equations. In grade 10 on the following slide, you'll see a lot of similar areas of strength. The math department does a really nice job at looking at this data, and they understand it. So overall strengths for 7, 8, and 10 were proportional relationships, equivalent expressions, and linear relationships. And while it's great to have several strengths in math, there were areas for growth as well. You may see some similarities that were on the strengths page, like the highlights, but it's through different questioning, right, for math. So I just want to recognize that. You may see some similar words. Completing multi-step processes in grade 7. I'm just picking one out from each. Grade 8, the Pythagorean theorem, equations, tables, and graphs. In grade 10, completing multi-step processes. So one of my favorite slides is talking about what we're going to do about it. And so the things that you have already started mentioning is kind of where my mind has been since we started crunching this data back in the summer. So on the ELA side, district-wide, we're focusing on inference and inference-based questions across the curriculum and using different types of essay prompts. And Sue spoke in detail about that piece. Also about our commitment district-wide on the focus standards, the writing focus standards for grades 7 through 12. And again, this work has already been done. We've committed to our hours of power and professional development, to reviewing, analyzing the MCAS data, and then selecting those standards, those writing standards, and how those are going to be embedded into our daily lessons. For math, it's targeted instruction to address areas of weakness. Working with the math department to embed constructed responses in regular classroom activities and assessment. And so for math, there is one area that we had recognized, and Sue, you could correct me if I'm off by saying this, but as I spoke to earlier, we recognized that our students did well in some types of questions and struggled in that same content, but the way it was being asked. So we focused, right, that's where the constructed responses comes in, how to embed more of those in there. And Stephen spoke to, it's not teaching them how to take the test, this is an area we struggled in. So I observed a classroom where it was really nice to see some of those skills, because I don't know about you, I get tripped up when it comes to multiple choice because I think they're all right. And so I'm one that checks all until you can't, right? Because that's just the safe way. But I think it's really important that this work is done. And the ELA, actually school-wide, everyone has done a really nice job and is committed to doing this work. So we are following the acceleration roadmap as a tool. As Bill stated, it's a district-wide commitment. We did start this work early on over the summer by participating and partnering with DESE to bring the Acceleration Academy to Granby, where we targeted, and the Acceleration Academy was open to all students, but we specifically targeted students that would need additional support. And those could be students that were full remote learning, or parents opted their students in and said, you know what, I recognize that my student, based on their report card, had seen X, Y, and Z, said I feel like they should be part of it, to try to catch them up in a way and to recover some learning loss. And this is the interesting part that Audrey, you were speaking to. So sharing the open responses, why not? Because as a parent, I would want to see what my student was writing. So we have a plan in place. So on parent-teacher conferences, all the ELA teachers have all the open responses. They have begun the process of sharing those with the students and meeting with them. It takes a bit of time, but that's a first step, is showing and holding the students accountable and trying to change that mentality, especially in the junior high, that they have, that it doesn't matter, and so I think it's changing that mentality piece. And on parent-teacher conference, using that and saying, this is ELA specifically, using that and saying, here's your child's open response. I want you to see it and I want you to understand, especially the grading rubric, like the scoring. Because when as parents you get a bar, it's really colorful, and then you get a little black dot that shows where you are. And that's what I look at. I just look at how they did, if my kids passed or not. I don't dive deeper in. You don't get open response. So this is a first. So I'm really excited about it. I'm not sure how it's going to go over, but I would hope that everyone will be appreciative of that effort.
I think it plays into growth mindset too, that, that idea of anything worth doing is worth doing well. So it doesn't matter if you think it doesn't matter, which it does, but also like you're doing it, give it your best effort. Don't just give up or say this is too hard. It plays right into that theme as well.
Right.
And I think we've been talking a lot about if people know we're paying attention to it, then they'll pay attention to it, right? If they click submit sometime in May and they never go back and hear about that, it's like, this was my score, I passed, I didn't pass, like, okay, and on to the next thing. But now,
wait.
in October, November, that passage where it's like, hey, this test is so boring, is coming back in front of me, and now it's to my parent, and it's like, okay, like, yeah. So I think it's about having a conversation, and because I think we've heard from teachers in the past, like, it doesn't count for anything. They don't think it counts for anything. So how do we motivate them? And I think some students, right, are self-motivated, and the parents push them, and like we see that in those responses as well. So I think some parents are going to get these responses and be like, wow, that's great work too, right? It's not just that one liner.
Oh, for sure.
But there's some students who I think we looked at who are very capable, and we were surprised, right? Like a blank page or whatever. We're like, that was the difference between meeting and exceeding. Like that blank page was the difference, or could have been the difference, and it's sometimes it's that final line.
Yeah. I like it.
So I'm going to back up to the Acceleration Academy. I totally lost sight, not surprising, of some of my thoughts. But when we started the Acceleration Academy over the summer, we ran our first 10 weeks, and then we shifted to a 6-week program of MCAS support specifically for those students. So they received extra instruction in preparation for the retests. I'm really curious when you think of how the Acceleration Academy is going. We're meeting with our 2 Acceleration Academy staff members to kind of assess where we're at in the program and set up our next 10 weeks to see, where we can go from there. And do we start looking at the students that weren't successful in biology, and so the Acceleration Academy has been really nice to have. And we do also offer the tutoring piece. I know Bill had mentioned the tutoring, and my hopes is to grow our late bus, to 2 days a week as opposed to one, because we need it. And that was kind of a plead for some money.
He's not even listening.
So
He's heard that plea before.
we're recognizing a need for it. The students want to stay after school, and it's hard if you only have one day, because teachers' after school hours vary. So I would love 5 days a week, but I'll settle on 2. But it's just more opportunities for kids, and we're seeing it, recognizing it, and I want to be able to support the kids and what they need.
So even without a late bus, though, the kids can still stay after?
Oh, of course.
Right,
Of course.
Just wanted to make sure.
It just makes it easier.
Of course, yeah.
For working families, for all families, but, some of our students, and unfortunate when you hear that, they can't get a ride, and we get it, it's taxing, but it's also nice to have it as an option. This was provide MCAS samples, tests to the classroom teachers. I would say for this one, it's earlier on, that work is being done. I think just having that work start earlier as opposed to a few weeks before the test starts. Collaborative work with the ILT and the team leaders. So everything, every thought, every ounce of effort towards any improvements, we run through our ILT and our team leaders first. So we can get the buy-in, from the teaching staff to make sure that they know that we're all committed in it together. And the last was continue to use the IXL data as formative assessments. I'm sure there's plenty of things that I missed, but does anyone have any questions?
I really like how you already have it kind of laid out, like you're hitting the ground running. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Well, and the amount of preventative things that were already kind of in place, it just seemed really thought out. I actually just look at the MCAS sample test. That brought up a question I had for East Meadow specifically too, but they have MCAS sample tests online, anyone can look at. Was that something, I know I did that with our family, because we had that 2-year gap. We had 5th graders that didn't take MCAS in 3rd grade or 4th grade, and didn't even know what it looked like. So I know I had found it and pulled it up and hey, this is what it looks like. It's not the scary, monster that's going to come at you, but are we kind of doing that and showing the kids what it looks like ahead of time to not be so nervous, especially with that gap that they had where some of these kids haven't taken it before. Sorry, that was totally delayed, but sample test brought me up to that.
No, we did it. They did it, and probably not as much as they usually would, because we were in that abbreviated period, but they did introduce that, and they did go over those practice tests, and we always walk them through it on the computers so that they can know how to log in and what it looks like and things like that. There's an actual practice test, different than what you're seeing, where they actually log in with a login and they go through it and they do it. And there's a few questions that everybody gets the same questions, but they do it. So, yep.
Awesome.
That's a lot of really great
it is.
information. So I appreciate all the work that you guys have done, because it's good. I mean, overall, I feel like, yes, we're down in some of them, but I still think it's, in a way, I think I was expecting much, much worse, just because of how people were talking about, homeschool, remote school, so I'm pleased as punch that we did as well as we did, because the way people were talking and talking at us during some of those meetings, I was like, oh my God, it's gonna be bad.
Well, and not to
So it's a testament to you guys of how hard you worked, and all the teachers and the staff. So that's really where I'm coming with that, is that we would have been in much worse situation if we didn't have who we have in all the right places. So I appreciate all the work that you guys did over the past 2 years and going forward. It's the proof's in the pudding, really.
Right, and just lastly, not to minimize this data, and it's great, but we're also comparing to 2019 pre-COVID. As a state, everyone across the Commonwealth went down in these scores in general. This isn't just a Granby problem, it's a statewide problem. And I just think just to have in the back of your head, we are down from 2019, but I'd be curious to see where we are even compared to other areas, because I'm sure a lot of communities are down test score wise, and we're all, you know, bridging this gap together. So it's not as alarming, I feel like, to see some points being down, because that was just kind of anticipated, right, with the gap that we had. So that was all.
Yeah, and I think our goal is that we're going to use data to make decisions, and we've talked about that for the past few months, certainly, and prior to that, and I think it's a tough data set to make a lot of decisions on because of all those variables, so we're trying to use 2019 and 2021 and IXL and DIBBLES and all these things so that we can figure out, like, where do these things cross over, and then we can be more targeted in our approach. And I think the more benchmark assessments we have over time, right? We're not talking about test, but we need to, like, every now and then dip our toes in the water to check the temperature and see where kids are growing, progressing, feeling stunted, and like respond to that. And you know, it's a lot of work, but that's really the foundation of who we are as an organization, right? It comes down to teaching and learning, and you know, like Mr. Latoy said, the teachers have been great about it. They're committed to it. Ms. Jordan said the same thing, and certainly appreciate their efforts. And it's a lot. Teaching is a hard job, and I don't think teachers get enough credit for all that they do. And you know, this is just one thing that we look at, but it's important. And you know, if you ask me, if they said tonight on our ride home that they were going to get rid of MCAS, I would not fight that. But this is this is what we're measured by right now. And like I said, we're not going to teach to the test, but we need to be responsive to the data. So thank you, especially to the leadership team for all the work that they put in on that. It's been quite a haul, which is why that slide deck did not go into your folder until about 9 o'clock last night.
Any other questions or anything on MCAS? All right. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Mr. Sullivan, your superintendent's report, please.
Yes, I will be quick, I promise. So, reminder, Granby Junior Senior High School parent conferences, Allie alluded to them, are next Monday and Tuesday. So students are dismissed at 11 o'clock on both days. Parents can contact the junior senior high school guidance department to set up an appointment with either a group of teachers or teachers. Tammy can certainly support them with that. We have early release for both schools next Wednesday, so that is 11 a.m. dismissal at the junior senior high school, 11:40 at East Meadow. To kick off the extended weekend for the Thanksgiving holiday. Hard to believe that is next week. Both schools are also talking about ALICE training drills taking place over the next week. So ALICE is our choice-based response to, you know, school emergencies. So it could be like fire drills, shelter in place, things like that. Right now, it's really low stakes in the most comfortable way to just say we're going to do a teach in place, talk to all students about what it is, what options they have, and what we expect from them.
So no enforcement presence or anything?
No.
Okay.
Other
Just
than
practices.
Officer Gilly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Okay.
Officer Gilly, our school resource officer, would be there, but no, we're not walking around shaking doors or handles or anything like that.
Those are fun.
So right now, it's, like I said, it's low stakes, but we want to be informative to students. Again, a lot of them haven't been in for 2 years, so, you know, fall out of that routine. And it's so different than what it used to be when it was code white, code blue, code red. Like now it's as much information as we can get out to people, and then they're making decisions based on the information they have. And so we've trained all the staff over the past few months, like I think everybody. I asked all of central office to be there, administrative assistants to be there, custodian. So I think we just did paras last month, and now we're taking the next step to students. So, and I anticipate Officer Gilly at some point providing an opportunity for parents in the community as well.
Silly question, I guess, but
I don't know if this district has done it as ours has, any supplies being provided to teachers with the Alice training? Because I know I went to a training a few years ago, and there was talks about wedges and all kinds of stuff, and then it was kind of supplied to us. I didn't know if we had done any of that.
Some of it, and I think part of it, as you know, is some of those supplies come up as the training's happening and people are asking questions. So you'll notice, I don't know if they're still in all the doors here, but certainly next door they have like the magnetic strips, so the doors remain locked, and then if a teacher needs to lock down, they can pull the strip off and the door just shuts, so it's automatically locked. You don't have to go searching for a key.
Yep.
Things like that. We talk about, ways that either you're like, those are bad examples for the doors, getting on the hinges, like there's bands and things like that. So there's been some requests for things like that.
Okay.
So, working with them on that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Of course. And then just another reminder, I'm getting a good response on the survey. I know another email went out to families yesterday, but my entry plan survey is open until November 30th. So if you haven't had the opportunity, please take a minute to respond. Students, staff, and parents it was sent to. So appreciate the feedback that we're getting to date. That's it. Yes.
Sorry, elementary students did it with their
They're going to be
teachers,
doing
though,
it
right?
with their teacher. I don't
But-
think they've all been with their teacher,
But
but
7 through 12 is supposed to be doing it
7 through 12 got it separately.
separately? Okay.
Yep.
Just to clarify.
Yes.
I'm just gonna take this moment because Marcus isn't here, but the.
Yes, of course. How could I
junior-
forget?
Junior class, fundraiser for Chipotle is tomorrow. I don't have the code
I do.
in front of me. Oh.
The Hadley Chipotle E9NJ7PW, and that is tomorrow from 5 to 9 p.m. again at the Hadley Chipotle.
Bingo. 7 to 9?
I had 5 to 9.
5 to 9. I thought you just said 7 to 9. I was like, wait.
Maybe I
Maybe-
did.
Is it not
But
5
it is
to 9?
5 to 9.
It's 5 to 9.
5 to 9.
It's posted also, I
Yeah,
think, on the
posted.
website.
I would have a very unhappy person if I went home without.
Yes, yes, and if you can't make it, I'm sure the class would accept cash donations, so.
And they'll take the online orders. There's a spot, I guess, online that you enter the
code. Yeah.
Any questions or anything else? Okay, Adam, you're up.
Yeah, I just have one thing, just hopefully the last update or one of the last updates on the lightning strike damage that we had here. All cameras have been replaced, the feeds have been restored. I know there's some tweaking of the camera, some of them are not pointing where they should be, but we're getting that all straightened out, and then the company will be on site tomorrow to replace alarm keypads and panels, and that's the last piece of the work for that. So hopefully by the end of this week we'll have everything replaced, repaired, and we'll be back to normal.
Excellent. Any other questions?
Is he sure?
No.
Never.
No.
I mean, honestly, it's like even after our last meeting, they came in and they identified something else. So
Yeah.
it's like when they come in to fix something,
They find something
they're like,
else.
well, this isn't working as it is, should be either. And it's okay because, and I checked with Adam and John this week, that we haven't submitted anything for the insurance yet. The claim remains open until the projects are finished. So as we're finding these things, we're able to pay that, put those things on the insurance claim.
So I was actually going to ask if we had an insurance claim, or was there any part of like the lightning protection warranty if it didn't work?
So you want to take that one?
Yeah.
So I think because it wasn't a direct, there's no evidence that it was direct. It's a surge through that came, they believe, from the outside. It wasn't like the building got struck by lightning that caused all this.
Okay.
A surge from another power source went back through the building.
Okay.
You were saying originally they thought it was maybe one of the poles or something on
Could've been.
202 that came
Yeah,
back.
just kind of backfed into the school.
Gotcha. So it wasn't like an actual strike or anything that, otherwise, like, I
It
didn't know
was
that.
caused by a lightning strike, but not a direct strike to our building. It was the back half power surge.
Yeah, we're actually, I think I mentioned this in one of the previous reports, we're participating in through MSBA, a post-occupancy survey for this building. So we're bringing up things like that.
Yeah.
That, you know, this happened in July. It was actually in our first meeting with them that we brought it up, and we're like, well, we don't know when you should visit because we're waiting for all these parts and all these things. And so that's the information. This is a new module through MSBA at 3 years after completion of a project. They're going back and trying to get information from the schools about how that process is run through, what challenges we're having now, things like 5 different vendors work on the lights, and now we need something fixed, and each vendor is saying, oh no, call this vendor and call that vendor. So we're like, you know, like, so those are, it's an opportunity for us to bring those things up, and they're actually on site this Thursday. They'll be here for a full day, so they'll see drop off, they'll see pickup, they'll see lunches, they'll have time with Mr. Latoya, they'll have time with John Sullivan. I'll be with them for a little bit, but I think Adam at some point in the morning. So yeah, so there's like 4 parts. There'll be a survey going out to the community on that as well, too. So
Sorry.
that's from them. That just happens to coincide with the survey that capacity team's talking about, the survey that I put out, the survey that the community relations team.
That's a lot of surveys.
Ours is not going out yet. We talked about it. We didn't say we were definitely doing
We
anything.
complained that we couldn't have input, now we have input.
Yes. Yep, plenty of opportunities. So
Anything else?
I'm good.
Question, just kitchen update, anything?
No.
Okay.
No update.
And then I feel like this is probably the appropriate time just to say we're still trying to connect with Select Board for a joint committee meeting sometime early in December, hopefully, although that's a lot closer than I care to admit. So I had sent an email, I think I copied a good part of you anyway, in on it, just reaching out, and my plan is to just follow that email up again, because I was hoping that maybe, you know, we would hear something, but haven't yet.
Oh, what day?
We don't have a date yet.
Okay.
that's what the email.
That was
That's
the
what we're
email,
trying
is
to do.
trying to reach out from them. And then just as part of your thing is just, we do have confirmation from Tracy for November 30th, 6:30. I think we decided we'll be in the cafeteria. And I just have to follow up with her and just ask for her to send us the slides ahead of time. So if we have any questions, we can do that. So I just have to, I'll follow up with her.
Meeting with her on the 30th, is that like a
That's
presentation?
her
that she-
presentations, budget
Okay.
presentation.
So I'm hoping that we'll be able to like really get the info out there. I mean, if that date's also knocking.
What do you
Right?
mean?
Like that it's
really
happening.
soon.
Oh.
Right,
2 weeks from today.
right.
So
Like
we need
it's
to
2
get that
weeks
out
from
there so
today.
that
Like
people-
have we posted anything yet
I
to share
haven't
with
posted, I
anybody?
don't know how
or-
that stuff gets posted, but we've been saying, I mean, I feel like we confirmed it at our last meeting that it was November 30th. This is just a reminder that it is November 30th. I think I mentioned it at the end that we had heard from Tracy, so.
And we'll put something out. We'll put out an.
I don't remember hearing anything
Yeah.
about it. Sorry. Or maybe
No,
I'm the
I didn't
only one.
either.
Okay.
But that's
Sorry about
okay.
that. I
No,
know-
it's fine.
I
No,
know
and
that-
actually she emailed me and was like, hey, would you like to meet before our meeting on the 30th? And I was like, what's on the 30th? Like I literally had like a,
So is there a
So-
way, Stephen, that you can add that to the weekly update that I know Mr. Latoya sends out and the RAM report? And we'll try to get it out to as many avenues as we can.
Well, and I'm thinking too, like our community also really needs to be there, right? Is that like their point here? This is part of rolling out our information on the budget. So are we gonna maybe create some sort of flyer that we can put at local places too? Right? Thoughts?
Or at least let this maybe connect with Glenn and let select board know that this is coming up so that he can bring it up at their meeting. Right.
Right, that'll get a different viewpoint too of people too to hear it.
Can we ask the town to put it on their calendar?
That'd be live, what can we, no.
I'm sure you reach out to Kathy.
Which one?
Maybe there's something that we
Kathy
can,
Leonard?
maybe there's something even that we can put together, like a 1-page, just date, time, place, purpose.
that can just be posted on all the, like, social media outlets and
But I'm
things
even
like
just
that.
like on the senior, like where they go in through that door, like just make sure there's a visual or something.
Well, and those same
yeah.
things,
Yeah.
if we just.
Right. I feel like we're making forth this effort. I know the last time Tracy was in town and there was about 6 people there, so.
Half of them are in this room.
Yep.
So, I'm gonna
There
say-
might have been a little more than 6.
So I do
maybe.
feel like, you know, we're gonna have this presentation regardless of the number of people that, we're gonna be able to tape it. And, you know, it's gonna be recorded and it can be, sectioned off, like time stamped or whatever. And we'll just try, you know, we'll post it as a resource and get it out there, so.
There's going to be a time for Q&A with her, which there was last time. I would make sure we say that too, because I feel like often people have questions, and although, yes, they can watch it recorded later, I think it's important to note that there will be opportunity for questions.
Yeah, we'll put together
Thank you.
a flyer. We'll make sure it's in both schools, information's going home. I can do the all call to our families.
Right.
And then maybe Jackie can reach out to Kathy and see if we can use that. They allowed us to send out like the newsletter last month that way too, so.
That'd be great.
We'll try those avenues.
Thank you.
Of course.
Is that something I needed for?
What's that?
Would it be something I needed for?
It's
It's
just
our
a regular
regular
scheduled
meeting.
meeting.
Oh, it's a regular meeting, got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
so yes, you're needed.
One last thing we haven't talked about is last Friday, Nancy Jenks, did we throw out how that all went update? Sorry.
Thank you. So, yeah, last Friday we
She was
had a vaccination clinic. It was our first pediatric vaccination clinic. I mean, it was for really anybody who wanted a vaccine or a booster. I think over 120 shots were given in the pouring rain. It was from 10 o'clock to 6 o'clock, and Nancy is already on top of them looking for an early December date. So really appreciate the work that Nancy puts into that. And I know the Board of Health has been complimentary of her as well, and really pushing it townwide, and you know, really appreciate her approach and the work that she's done in regards to that. And Friday was a testament to her, so thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
Anything else? All right, CES?
Meeting tomorrow.
Still close. All right, is there any other thing that we want to discuss, or are we all set?
So there'll be no subcommittees at our next meeting. It'll be a presentation and then any business. Is that correct?
That's the way I'm understanding it.
Okay, perfect.
I'm not making this up, like I know. I can't find that email. Anyway, if we're all set, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
One last one. Sorry, you had asked me earlier how many members. There's 12.
Awesome.
On our school capacity work group.
Okay. That's good.
Yes.
Thank
I meant
you.
to get back on that, but
No, that's perfect.
All right, and on that note, can I make a motion to adjourn this meeting?
I'll second.
Awesome. All those in favor?
Aye.